Good evening. We're interrupting regular programming with breaking developments out of the Middle East. Reports are coming in that a coalition of forces has crossed into northern Israel from Syria. Military analysts confirm that units identified as originating from Turkey, Syria, Russia, and Iran have mobilized in what appears to be a coordinated invasion, a scenario eerily reminiscent of the ancient prophecy found in Ezekiel 38. Israeli defense officials have activated multiple layers of their missile defense network, including the Iron Dome, David Sling, and the Arrow 3 system, all designed to intercept incoming rockets and long range missiles. Despite these efforts, the sheer volume of attacks has overwhelmed several sectors. Casualties are mounting, and emergency crews are working around the clock. But tonight, something extraordinary is reported. Witnesses near Jerusalem described what they call miraculous events. At least 3 intercontinental ballistic missiles were detected falling toward the city, yet none detonated. 2 buildings collapsed, several people were injured, but there were no explosions. Military engineers are baffled. Adding to the mystery, footage circulating online shows a man, identity unconfirmed, appearing at the scene, reportedly healing the wounded and performing acts that defy explanation. Some are calling him the Messiah. Others warn of deception. As tensions arise and nations align, many are asking whether this moment marks the beginning of something far greater, perhaps even the dawn of the tribulation itself.
Well, that was fun. Yes, it's really PaDaddy Dave here, and I'm just here to introduce the possibility in your mind that before long, this is what many people will be seeing on their TV screens around the world, is this idea that there will be an invasion force happening in and around Israel into Jerusalem as they come in. Headed toward Jerusalem as they come in, I should say. You recall I mentioned in the very last video, as we see the opening of the seals in Revelation, that the scenario that's portrayed in Revelation chapter 6 is very much as what military experts have said resembles the types of things that follow war. With the coming of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, there is the deception of power, the rise of power, deceptive rise of power. I believe we called it, and I think we called it just war, would be the second horse, the second horseman, famine, death, and then persecution, and then cosmic and environmental upheaval. So those types of things very much are so similar to what we read in Ezekiel 38. And you say, whoa, Dave, hold on here. The Gog and Magog war. Doesn't the Gog and Magog war, isn't that called the Gog and Magog war in Revelation 20? Or, wait, Dave, Gog and Magog, isn't that the same thing as Armageddon? Or doesn't the Gog and Magog war happen in the middle of the tribulation? Well, there are different opinions of this, and there are reasons why I believe that what really we are seeing in Revelation chapter 6 as a war kicking off by virtue of the Lamb opening the scrolls is because he is bringing about judgment upon the world. He's allowing mankind, much as in Romans chapter 1, to, okay, you want it this way, I'm going to give you over to what you want, your desires, your passions, your greed, what have you. And that's just for a season. And as things escalate in the 70th week of Daniel, it gets more and more horrific. It gets really out of control. Much of that is God pouring out wrath proactively upon the world. But here, it's more of, as we see in Ezekiel 38, the Lord is telling Gog and Magog, I am leading you by the nose. You said this in your heart. It's coming to your mind to think a certain way, but I'm going to lead you in by the nose. So he's going to hook Gog in to lead this coalition in. So there's no other war on this scale, though, that does these things that's described elsewhere in the Bible. Now, there are some things I want to point out regarding the Gog and Magog war and the timing of it, and it's much debated, and that's fine. But with respect to, for instance, Gog and Magog in Revelation 20, which would be there, it's described at the very end of the millennium, the very end of the 1,000-year reign of Christ, actually after the end of that 1,000-year period. Let me just say, Jesus will reign forever and ever, and his kingdom will continue on the earth forever and ever. But there's this specific window, the specific era, time frame mentioned in Revelation 20 that's called the millennium, or the 1,000 years, a 1,000-year period where the Lord will inaugurate his kingdom on earth, usher in the kingdom, bring in the mortal survivors of from the tribulation period. As Christ's second coming physically here on the earth has happened, he raises all the Old Testament saints. They get to go into Old Jerusalem. And as we see these prophecies in Jeremiah and Isaiah and in the minor prophets, he permits them to go on and they rebuild their walls and their villages and their cities, their streets, their vineyards. They enjoy a time of peace and harmony on the earth because, as we read very early on, Satan is bound in the abuso, in the pit, for 1,000 years. But then after the 1,000 years, he's released for a small season, and he is able to round up a coalition, much like the Gog and Magog type of scenario. Except this is going to be, the difference is Revelation 20 tells us this is kind of a global thing from all over the world, unbelievers. Well, where'd the unbelievers come from? Well, only believers go into the millennium period, but they have children, and their children have children, and their children's, you get the idea. After 1,000 years, that's a lot of people. I mean, United States here, we are, as I record this 2026, 250 years as officially as the United States of America, independent. Been here a little bit longer. People started trickling in the 1600s from Europe, correct? Well, what's the population here now? Well, yes, it's just a few million, 300 million plus. But then we've got, is that what it is? I don't keep track anymore. I really don't. So these millions of people here in this country, after 250 years, and that's all there is. But see, people die, people are killed in wars, and so forth. So what will it be like 1,000 years of that and people not dying? So the population is going to be quite huge. And the Old Testament describes nations and countries and so forth, and describes countries where if they do not do what they're supposed to do, like at the Feast of Tabernacles, and go up the road, the King's Highway into Jerusalem, then the Lord will shut water off, shut the rain off for those countries if they do that. So there are multiple countries involved, not just the Jews in Israel, not just believing Christians now living in Jerusalem and around in the area, but really the whole world. There's nothing that says that people are restricted to just the Middle East at all. So what will the population be? Well, quite large. And apparently many will be unbelievers. So in a very Gog and Magog type way, Satan himself will be freed from his chains. He'll round people up and try to march to Jerusalem and take the Messiah out one last time. But then as we read the text, he cuts them down at a word. His tongue like a two-edged sword, like the word of God. He's just going to, get away from me. He's just going to cut them down and it'll be over really quickly. Unlike the Ezekiel 38 and 39 Gog and Magog war, which seems to have a lot more involved. It's similar in that he's going to rain fire down from heaven, that kind of thing, and take out the forces. Hey, look at this. My youngest daughter's new kitty cat, one of them, and boy, she's a brat. Yes, her name's Mochi. She gets into everything. Anyway, so in that regard, it's a lot like the Gog and Magog war. Now, the limitations as far as the differences go are Armageddon is going to be worldwide forces all gathered together in the Valley of Megiddo. Armageddon is a global type of an affair. Gog and Magog mentions some specific countries surrounding Israel, but it's not the whole world. But it is fire from heaven, and they do launch attacks, and some miraculous things happen, and so forth. Well, let's take a look at some of those similarities. But the timing, again, to address the timing, is we see in beginning verses 17, 18, and 19 of Ezekiel 38, if you take a quick look, the Lord is speaking about his wrath, his great fury, and so forth. Well, what we read in 1 Thessalonians is that we, as believers, are not going to see or experience the wrath of God upon the earth in the latter days. That when that happens, that Paul says that we have no need to be concerned. That doesn't concern us. He didn't give us any survivor tips or anything like that. Didn't tell us how where we're supposed to take off to, where we're supposed to go. There's nothing like that. So we believe that the rapture happens before that because we aren't supposed to see this wrath that is coming upon the whole world to test those who are coming upon the earth or who live upon the earth, Revelation 3:10. So clearly need more caffeine. It's time to wake up. It's time for the whole world to wake up. Because now the other question comes, well, then why would the Gog and Magog thing, okay, so we're not going to be here. The church isn't going to be here. The rapture is going to happen. The church will be absent. That doesn't mean the Gog and Magog war can't happen later. Or how about the mid-trib? Or how about the end of the tribulation? Well, there are some things that happen described mostly in Ezekiel 39. And that is that for several months, there are going to be people going around and planting flags marking contaminated bones and bodies and so forth. And then part of the process is they'll take yellow flags or whatever and they'll stick them in the ground wherever, and people are going through probably wearing hazmat suits and marking wherever they find bodies. Now, I don't know if this is because of radiation or if it's because of something biological or if it's chemical. I don't know. Or if it's just general contamination, because as we've read, death and all kinds of bad things can happen just by virtue of the disease that can come from all the bodies all over the place. Horrific. But there's this long mop-up that takes place, and part of the mop-up and all the things that happen, and burning the weapons for fuel for 7 years. Well, are we supposed to believe that the Lord Jesus, when he returns at the end of the tribulation, will permit power plants to continue running as they do, old tech, by virtue of what he does, and spewing whatever smoke and whatever contaminated materials and stuff, burning the weapons for fuel for 7 years. That means going into the millennium for a spell. Now, I just don't see it. He's making all things new. It's what Jesus does during the time of restoration. He'll make all the weapons, they'll just disappear anyway. He's going to somehow roll them back up into the atomic structure of everything and put everything back, tuck everything back in the way where it belongs, and make everything roll back the way it's supposed to be with nature and all the trees and the water and all the beautiful plants, animals, all the things that he said were good in the first 6 days of creation. Created all these things and he said they were good. So he's going to bring things back to the way they were back when there was a garden. It's going to bring the whole world back to Eden. So I don't see him burning or allowing the burning of whatever weapons for power. In the millennium, there's not going to be any need for that. That's a redundancy. So I see it happening early on. So there's a lot of reasons. And I do have, as I keep mentioning, along the bottom down there, you will see videos and playlists and so forth, or a search, and you can do a search for Gog, Magog, what have you, one or both. And there are videos that go into a little bit more detail on this and differences between Gog and Magog and Armageddon and so forth. They're just very different types of scenarios. So what we see, though, in Ezekiel 38 and 39 war, which I believe, again, is what we are reading about in the seals of Revelation chapter 6. I've got a list here. I might just make a PDF file. I'll try to do that, make a PDF file with this chart in here, and then I will make a link in the description so that you can click on it and you'll be able to download the file, this chart. So we see sudden great war and invasion. Don't you agree? Speaking of invasion, I'm getting invaded a lot lately by this little one right here. She's really cute, but she wants to knock things over and bat things around, and she's must be a ham and wants to get in on the video, on the fun down here. What are you trying to get at now? What is that? I don't want you messing with that. And sometimes she'll walk on my keyboard and she'll type things or shut things off or turn things on. It's kind of special. So, sudden great war and invasion. Ezekiel 38 and 39, verses 49 and 15 to 16 talk about a vast northern coalition comes like a storm, a great army against Israel. In Revelation 6, in the seals, we see in verses 3 to 4, the second seal, a red horse, peace is taken from the earth, men slay one another. So looking at the military / science cascade, outbreak of major war, deterrence fails, coalitions mobilize, large-scale kinetic conflict begins, is what the experts say. And then number 2 is divine wrath is engaged. Ezekiel 38 verses 18 to 19, my fury will come up in my face, in my jealousy and in the fire of my wrath, is what the Lord says there in Ezekiel 38. In Revelation 6, the people cry out, hide us from the face of him, for the great day of his wrath has come. Chapter 6, verses 16 to 17. Hey, that's mine. So the transition from human conflict to systemic judgment from God, war triggers cascading crises beyond human control, what analysts call strategic systemic shock. Number 3, in similarities, great global earthquake, geophysical shock. In Ezekiel 38, verses 19 to 20, it describes a great earthquake. All men shall shake at my presence. So they're going to recognize that this is beyond normal earthquakes that we've seen before. At the same time, in Revelation 6:12, we read about a great earthquake, and the sun became black and the moon like blood. And we've described this before, where it's not a literal black of the sun, where it's just all of a sudden it's a black light, or the moon turns to blood, literal blood, hemoglobin. You have debris in the air, creates a Doppler type effect. At night, when the sun is out, the moon appears to be blood red. The sun becomes kind of weird gray with a weird gray kind of a halo shroud around it. And this is what happens. This is what happens too. So this is what the military will describe: infrastructure level shock, bombardment, W&D risk, grid collapse, global system disruption, communications, power, logistics. All these things happen in the earthquake. It's going to really bring things down. Then another similarity that we see is sword, pestilence, famine, hail, and fire. Good grief. In Ezekiel 38, verses 21 and 22, says, every man's sword, pestilence, and bloodshed, overflowing rain, great hailstones, fire, and brimstone. In Revelation 6, verses 7 and 8, the fourth seal describes a pale horse, death by sword, famine, pestilence, and beasts of the earth. Beasts of the earth. You're not going to attack people, are you? Are you going to attack people? You do it now, don't you? You're just not bloodthirsty yet. So complex humanitarian emergency is what that's called. Combat deaths, plus famine, plus epidemics, plus breakdown of order. So it's a classic war cascade in modern conflict analysis. 5, fear of the Lord and global recognition. In Ezekiel 38:23, and also in 39:67, 6-7, it describes, I will be known in the eyes of many nations. They shall know that I am the Lord. So there'll be a recognition of the Lord, who he is, as the one who's doing this. Now, what are you looking to jump on over there? You're going to create havoc, aren't you? Yes, you are. And Revelation 6:15-16 talks about kings, great men, slaves, and free hide, acknowledging the Lamb's wrath. In fact, they're calling out to the rocks in caves, probably in deep underground military bunkers, DUMBs as they're called. They'll be crying out. All the elites of the world will be hiding in these bunkers thinking that they're safe, but then they're going to be crying out for the Lord for the rocks to hide them and save them from the Lord, from his wrath. Why don't they just repent? There's a thought. So there's going to be global psychological shock. Populations and leaders realize the conflict is existential. Fear, panic, and world order crisis language dominate. And then finally, 6, global and stellar scale calamity. Ezekiel 38 describes in verses 19-22 a quake, terror, sword, pestilence, hail, fire, brimstone. Revelation 6 in the seals, in verses 12-17, describes cosmic signs, the sky receding, rolling up like a scroll, that kind of thing. So there'll be some explosions that create, I don't know, if mushroom clouds. Who knows what's going to be going on? It's going to be calamitous, though. Every mountain and island moved. And then, so the military science cascade description of this is systemic collapse into the world as we know it phase. So analysts talk in terms of failed states, regional collapse, potential nuclear winter, climate, and atmospheric destruction. So I would encourage you to go in and read, again, Ezekiel 38 and 39, and kind of compare that with what we read about in Revelation chapter 6. We will, next time, we are going to, this kind of completes the overview of Revelation chapter 6. And now we're going to get into more verse by verse, a little bit more direct in the flow of Revelation chapter 6. But I just wanted to give you some background information so that you can compare what we read about in the chapter with what we read about in Ezekiel 38 and 39. The forces are gathered there now, just over the border of Syria. All those nations. There are other nations. The things like the Houthis to the south and Hamas and Libya's involvement and so forth. All these forces, these countries, are all over there right now, staged. And I say frequently, I really don't see them packing up their bags and saying, this was a bad idea. Let's just go home. Let's just not do this. So watch what's going on. Watch the Middle East. Watch what's going on with Iran over there. The president of the United States is deluding himself if he thinks he's signed agreements and it's going to make Iran become a peaceful nation. Persia, in other words, from Ezekiel 38, that they're just going to kind of say, you know what? Yeah, this has been bad behavior. Let's just go home. Enjoy our barbecues. No pork though. And let's leave Israel alone. They're not so bad. They're not so bad after all. That just is not going to happen. It's not going to happen at all. So watch what's going on in the Middle East, because that's where things begin to really happen. Let's look at, real quick, before I let you go and we start going verse by verse in Revelation chapter 6, Gog. Let's look at some of these names here: Gog, Magog, Rosh, Meshach, and Tubal. And their opinions vary on this, but so I'll try to give you some of the different opinions on this. And you can kind of compare with what we are seeing in the news today and who's who of involvement over there. So if you take a look at Ezekiel 38, you'll see Gog as an ancient name. The ancient sense is a personal tribal leader title, chief prince over northern peoples. In the modern sense, a future political military leader over the coalition, not a country, but a ruler. This is not the Antichrist, because as we read in, I believe it's in the next chapter, Ezekiel 39, that Gog dies in the hills outside of Israel. So this will not be Antichrist, because the Antichrist will continue going. And we know the Antichrist does not go out that way when we get into Revelation chapter 19. Are you done? You going to go play? See you. Magog are the descendants of Japheth associated with Scythian peoples north of the Black Caspian Seas. So a lot of people will identify this with some overlap going on between Russia and Turkey, for instance. So it's up there in that northern region. Generally identified with the former Soviet sphere north of Israel, often focused on Russia, and possibly includes parts of Central Asia like Kazakhstan and places like that. Rosh, if taken as a proper noun, is not chief. It means it can mean head. It's a people or land in the far north, and it's often debated. In the modern region, commonly linked with Russia, again, phonetic and geographic argument is from the uttermost parts of the north. So opinions vary on that. So we just know that generally all those folks from up there in the north, the former Soviet Union, they're just going to come down. They want the oil, they want the resources in Israel. And also there's a spiritual component where they don't like Israel. So the forces behind these forces is satanic. They don't like Israel. Meshach, ancient is Mushki. Meshach people in Anatolia, in the modern region of central and northern Turkey, sometimes extended toward the Caucasus Mountains, Caucasus regions. Tubal, also called Tabal, Tabal, as we would transliterate it into the English. In eastern Anatolia, modern region is eastern Turkey, northeastern Turkey, Cappadocia, Anatolia area. Other coalition members, Persia. Everybody knows this. This is a foregone conclusion that Persia is Iran. The borders are a little bit blurry as far as borders move over time and things. So, but Persia is Iran. Modern Iran with historical reach into parts of Iraq, and also into parts of Afghanistan and Pakistan. Kush, south of Egypt, Nubia. Modern region is primarily in the Sudan, South Sudan, sometimes extended toward Ethiopia. Put or Foot is west of Egypt, associated with Libya. The modern region of Libya, also possibly parts of Algeria and Tunisia along the North African coast. Gomer, the Cimmerians, I guess, north of the Black Sea, later linked with Anatolia. They're going to be involved. Opinions vary about that too. Often parts of Turkey. Some extend toward Ukraine and Crimea. Beth Togarmah, House of Togarmah. Togarmah in the region of Armenia and Anatolia. So it's eastern Turkey, Armenia, Georgia, and possibly parts of the Caucasus. Secondary names related that are elsewhere, and people will disagree at this. Sheba and Dedan in Ezekiel 38:13. The Arabian Peninsula trading powers. So Saudi Arabia, Yemen, some of the Gulf states. Tarshish and the young lions of Tarshish, Ezekiel 38:13. And of course, this is much debated too. Western maritime power often replaced it in southern Spain or Western Mediterranean. Speculative, some say, well, it could include other parts of Europe, like in the United Kingdom and its offshoots, because the young lions of Tarshish would be, our origins are from those areas, more toward the west. And that includes the young lions of Tarshish. Young lions would be the Americas, North American continent, including, Canada, United States, and also New Zealand and Australia and other similar places. So it's more speculative, but that's just a guess. So with all that in your hip pocket, go back and read Ezekiel 38 in particular and Revelation chapter 6, and continue to watch, believe almost nothing. Watch the news, see what's going on in the Middle East, see what's going on with Iran and all those forces around Israel, and understand that that's going to escalate, that there will not be a lasting peace between Israel and Iran. It just is not, it's not biblical, so it's not going to happen. Not that we necessarily relish any of that, other than the outcome. The outcome will be, in the end, Christ wins. So with that, have a blessed day.
PaDaddy.